Good afternoon, everyone. Hope everyone is doing well. We're going to do this year a little bit differently than we normally do because of a conflict with an event that's happening at Shirat David. We didn't want to conflict and cause people to just make a decision. We decided that we're going to do it. We're going to pre-record this week's Zera Shimshon for the sake of consistency. So we're going to start with a first offering Bezrat Hashem that this week, which is the last two Shabbatot of the year of Elul, as we get closer to Rosh Hashanah, Bezrat Hashem. This we continue to hope and pray, and we uplift our tochen and our lives and our tefillot, so that we start our new year with fresh. As I heard say a nice little idea that Misha ochel b'Shabbat, Misha torech b'Shabbat, the erev Shabbat yochal b'Shabbat, and Elul is the 6th month, and Tishrei is the 7th month. So if we work and toil and make extra effort in the 6th month, which is erev Shabbat, then on Shabbat, which is Rosh Hashanah, and throughout Tishrei, we'll actually really enjoy an amazing year. So Bezrat Hashem, that will be true. And may the tefillot and may the Yeshua, all the people who are listening, see Yeshuot and brachot b'zchut Zera Shimshon. So we're going to start with a short drush 10, drush yud. It's based on the idea that during Parshat Tavo, this week's Parsha, we obviously know that the end of this week's Parsha has what's called a tochacha, one of the two tochachot. One is in a Sefer Dvarim and one is in Sefer Vayikra. And here Moshe describes all the different tragedies and things that will happen when or if we decide to abandon the Torah. But it's also only in stark contrast to what happens, the way Moshe describes the brachot right before the tochacha, or the klalot, if you will. And the contrast, or the back-to-back nature of these brachot versus klalot or versus tochacha gives us some sort of interesting idea, kind of framework, and that's really what the Zera Shimshon is going to mention. Zera Shimshon is going to discuss. It kind of brings up a framework of how the Jewish people kind of fought their path overall throughout history, if you actually think about it that way. And you'll see that he mentions that just like the brachot, when we start, we really go, and we can go really high and really be at the top of our game. And then when we come down, we'll see that we get to the lowest depths, and you can read the Tochacha to see. And if you really want to make it relevant, you can actually go through some of the Tochacha, and you'll see that many of those things we experienced this year and are experiencing this year in Israel and around the world. So if we look at, in order to a little bit more of an introduction to this piece of Torah, the last thing I'd like to say is that this Torah is based on something that's from Sefer Bereshit, and the Zera Shimshon does an amazing job connecting all the different pieces, and I think that's really something that kind of shows the paradigm of, like I said, of the Jewish people, and also very typical of the Zera Shimshon, where he brings something from a different Sefer or a different part of the Chumash and connects it, or a different Midrash, and connects it to something that's going on in this week's Parsha. So as we know, the Baal HaTurim, who's mentioned in many of the Mikrot Gadol that we probably all have, he says that it's very common for the Baal HaTurim to say Bamisorah, meaning how many times does this phrase appear in the Torah or in Tanakh, and then he will then continue by proceed to name them. So the Torah Yud, the 10th Torah of Parshat Tavo, starts as follows: Bamisorah, V'Rachel Chamisha, and there are 5 times in Mesorah, meaning usually in the Chumash, but it could also be in Tanakh, that the word V'Rachel appears, meaning V'Rachel, the word and Rachel, not just Rachel, and it's the Siman, meaning the different places are V'Rachel ba'imatzon, V'Rachel et hayafator, V'yiftach et rachma V'Rachel akara, V'Rachel akcha et hatrafim, V'achar nigash Yosef V'Rachel v'yishtachavu. So those are the 5 places, each one of them talking about different parts of different parts of Sefer Bereshit, but I think the idea here is really to understand how this is connected and why it's connected to our Parsha. So the Zera Shimshon takes us on a nice journey, and I think this is really what kind of brings us to our point, is that Yermoz Lamasha Ira L'Chneset Yisrael Shenikrat Rachel. He says these 5 times that the Baal HaTurim mentions, or the 5 psukim, he says that each one of them alludes to an event that took place throughout the Jewish people throughout history. So Chmod Atamar, and he says, as we specifically say that the time the Jewish people were taken to exile, Rachel mivaka, it says Rachel mivaka al banah. We know that Rachel is Rachel is referring to actually um, to our the mother Rachel, but here we if we look through some of the psukim and actually look at interestingly enough, if we look at the Targum in the pasuk where it says Rachel mevakeh al banea in Yirmiyahu, if we look at that pasuk, it actually says the Targum says that Rachel is actually referring to the Jewish people. So here is where the Zera Shimshon starts taking the connection between Virachel from the psukim that the Balatura mentioned that 5 times appear in Sefer Bereshit to Rachel, expanding it to the Jewish people as a whole. So now he says, it says, Rachel Rachel is crying for her children because they have gone into a galut. And it says, the 5 times that the word Rachel appears allude to something beyond just, the fact that Rachel is literally that she's crying for Bnei Israel leaving Galut, but rather he's talking about that Zera Shimshon makes the understanding or makes the kind of expands it and says this is actually something referring to all of the different components of the Tochacha, and we'll see how we get to that. Shekasher. When Bnei Israel entered the land of Eretz Yisrael, it says Rachel ba'imatzon. Rachel arrived with her flock. Who is her flock? She came. She being in this case, Rachel is not referring to Bnei Israel themselves, but rather here Rachel alludes to the sheep, meaning that the Jewish people themselves. So here Rachel kind of takes another layer, and it says that Rachel was coming with her flock. Who's Rachel? In this case, most likely Hashem is Rachel, and therefore Hashem is coming with his tzon, his flock, coming to Kamosh Ne'emar, Vaten Soni Tzon Mariti Adam Atem. So it says, as we know, that there's a pasuk that says, Vaten Soni, you are my flock, and I'm your pastor, and it kind of also alludes to, we kind of say that, in at least the Ashkenazim say a piyut on Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur that says, it says it says Anachnu anu rayatecha, right? Anu tzonecha anu ata tzonecha anu tzonecha v'ata rayatenu. That's the part. Excuse me for the delay. Anyway, so we see Kirahi, and there's the pasuk continues to say that Rachel was a shepherdess, meaning so that what we're saying here is that Hashem brought us into Eretz Yisrael, and Klomar Haitaru'a Otanik B'Meitav. She saw us in the most prosperous land, being Eretz Yisrael, and so the first pasuk Rachel Ba'imatzon means or alludes to when Bnei Israel came into Eretz Yisrael, and Hashem was our leader, led our flock. Which then led us to the most beautiful and prosperous time in the Jewish history, which is Va'az Shema Noda B'Sharim. Right after that, the Jewish people became known throughout the world via Lua, V'Shabchua, Shabanu Hamikdash. Right, once we get into Eretz Yisrael, we become famous and we become well known. And what happens? We build Beit Hamikdash, Shabanu Hamikdash, V'Haya Hashem Imam L'Shem L'Tifer V'La. Right, and that's we became Hashem. We became the center of everything, and we became we were known and famous for what we did. So here, the next pasuk, which is in that Balatura mentions, Virachel and Rachel. Here he's talking about the fact that when we were in Eretz Yisrael, which is the first pasuk, we get into Eretz Yisrael. The second pasuk was already referring to the fact that we were so beautiful and filled with splendor because of the Beit HaMikdash and everything that happened. Then Hashem adds his own Masa Kadosh Baruch Hu. What did Hashem do for Bnei Israel? Hashem opens her womb. That's literally the pasuk is open her womb. And Rachel, but Rachel, Virachel here doesn't mean and Rachel, but rather Virachel, meaning but Rachel remained akara. She couldn't have children. As we know, it says that in the Gemara in Brachot, it says, based on the pasuk in Yeshayahu, which was one of the haftarot. Last week's haftarah, we actually said, Mishum delo yalda rani. A woman should sing because she has not given. A woman should sing not because she is not able to get rani akarai. You should be singing. The word rani means to sing. How could someone who's akara, can't give birth, how should she be singing? Why should it would not be reason to rejoice, but it should be a reason to be sad. Ella, the Gemara in Brachot says, rather because in comparison to Edom, which if we compare the end of the pasuk in Yeshayahu, so this pasuk is in comparison to the Edom. The Bnei Israel Rani Shalo Yalda Banim Le'Gonim. The Jewish people should be singing for she is still considered barren or unable to have children, and that she has not given birth children who are destined for Gehenom, like the people of Edom are. V'afkan Amar Katuv Shepatach Rechem Anochrit Lo Li Banim Le'Gonim. So here too Hashem opened the womb of Vayiftach et Rachma, meaning her womb. So she opened up her womb for idolaters, for Bnei Avodah Zarah, to give birth to children who are destined for Gehenom. But Rachel akara milo holid banim l'ka'elu Gehenom. But Rachel remains barren from giving birth to such children. And then, nevertheless, the glorious state of affairs did not last. Meaning, we're continuing to describe this beautiful journey, and like a slowly inclined journey of success, progress, and growth, and then all of a sudden, Omnam shechatu Yisrael v'avdu avodah zarah. But however, just like we said, the brachot are followed by the klalot. So the brachot are always, if we follow our Torah, when we get into Eretz Yisrael, we continue to be filled with bracha. However, when the Jewish people began to sin in Eretz Yisrael, dahainu v'rachel lakchat trafim, like literally, that's what the pasuk literally means. Rachel took the trafim, meaning she took the idols of her father. So too here, just Bnei Israel, in this case, V'rachel, meaning Bnei Israel, took the trafim, meaning the avodah zarah, the idols. Az nishtaptu b'galut, then they were subject to galut. Vayu avadim, and they would sink to the lowest of the low that became slaves to their captors. And as it says, K'moshe Katuv, as it says in this week's Tochacha, and that's what really the connection at the end of the day is how all of this fits into this week's parsha is really right here at the last pasuk. It says, "K'moshe Katuv, v'itmakartem sham lo'ivecha la'avadim lishvachot." Here, Moshe is giving us the Tochacha and says, "You will offer yourselves for sale to your enemies and become their slaves." V'zeu v'achar nigash Yosef Rachel v'yishtachu. And this is really the end, the last. Rachel akchat atrafim, she's meaning Bnei Israel start being Oved Avodah Zarah, and the next step. What's the last and final step? And the final pasuk that we see the word Virachel, Yosef and Rachel, here referring both to Bnei Israel and people in general, people of Bnei Israel in general, meaning that it implied that the Jewish people were oppressed by other nations, and now they have to bow down to the non-Jews' will. And if I had to conclude and say the zchut of the learning that we do and the zchut of the tshuva that we do during Elul, which should allow us to see the brachot and see the greatness and allow us to see the amazing things that the brachot, and let us see all the fulfillment of the brachot and prevent us from and avoid and the brachot, the mitzvot that we do and the tshuva that we do during this time in the last couple of weeks of Elul. We should be zocheh to see the brachot and come to fulfillment and avoid and eliminate and stop any of the klalot, as it says, tachel shana v'kilotea, tachel shana v'birchotea. We should end the klalot. That's why we do the klalot now before Rosh Hashanah, so that way we can end the year with whatever there's left of this year, and finish it off and start with the brachot. So B'ezrat Hashem, we should continue to see the brachot and shuvah and Geula Shlema B'mehira.